So to me, being a bad bitch is unique to each woman. It's really about being unapologetic in who you are, which includes your magic, but it also includes like your mess and the things that are harder to accept about yourself, and just like owning that you're human and like you're still a bad bitch, you know, despite the things that you're working to improve, despite your, weaknesses or vulnerability.
Yo, lovers. Welcome to Sex, Love, and Everything in Between. We're the O'Neills. You're here with Meg and Jacob.
And this is the place we have really uncensored conversations about sex, intimacy, and relationships. We're super excited you're here. Enjoy this episode. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. I have the beautiful Amy Rushworth with me today. Hi, Amy.
Hi, so good to see you.
I know, so good. I'm just excited to chat to you, whether this is being recorded or not.
I know. I feel like we kept trying to catch up so many times, and so now we're having our catch up. So totally. I'm excited as well.
For heaps of ears to hear as well.
Yeah.
I want to intro you like in the way that we met, which was what, over 2 years ago now.
2021, the start of 2021.
Yeah, 3 years ago, we were in a mastermind together for that entire year. And yeah, I reflect, that was so early. And in terms of my business journey, that was really the year my business took off. And I remember there was probably like 10, maybe more women in this mastermind. And you were such an expander for me. Like out of every woman in that space, you were such an expander for me in the way that you showed up online, in the way that you showed up in that mastermind, like the level of generosity you brought and the way you celebrated every single woman. And the way, particularly, what I really witnessed in you was the way you met challenging moments inside your business, which is like the beautiful thing about being in a mastermind, because you're not just seeing the highlight reel on Instagram, you're seeing like the actual real life shit that goes on for a woman in business and all the, nitty gritty parts of it. And I remember you had some challenging things arise and you were just such a solid fucking leader. And I was so inspired by your leadership, and I was just, so inspired by how you held yourself as a woman and continue to be. Yeah, and you continue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm a Leo. I'm a projector. So you're like recognizing me and complimenting me. I'm like, thank you so much. Like that honestly just made me so happy. Thanks, babe.
Well, you do. You're this beautiful combination of, and we're going to get into this really today around like your movement is really about being an unapologetic woman and supporting other women to do that. And you do this in such a beautiful way, like the way you walk through the world, the way you show up in your work, you bring this real that Leo energy, I'm going to be bougie, I'm going to wear what I want. And there is this unapologeticness to you. And then there's also this depth of humility and this depth of like vulnerability and rawness, which I think is just such a beautiful combination, and which makes you so magnetic as a woman, but also as a leader and a woman doing the work you do in the world.
Well, thanks. I'm loving this interview already.
I would love to hear in your own words. Do you want to tell the people about what you do in the world, how you serve women? Yeah, and then we'll flow from there.
Yeah, so as you gently touched on, my movement is all around being an unapologetic woman, and my work is rooted in helping women to activate that. So I don't necessarily believe that you need to like become all of these extra things. It's more about tapping into the unapologetic nature that is already within you. So like a lot of my clients almost return to that childlike state of like they're unapologetic inner little girl, but now they also have the maturity and the wisdom and the life experiences of womanhood to sort of marry with that. And I think it's this beautiful combination of becoming more in touch with your own humanity and your innocence, but also like your power and your wisdom and the force that you are in the world. And there's so many layers to the work that I do and the ways that I facilitate it, because it's really deep shit to decondition from all the things that stop us from being unapologetic. The shame, the cultural conditioning, the good girl conditioning is something that I touch on a lot of in my work. There's patriarchy, there's sexual trauma and conditioning. Like that, it just comes at women from every angle about who they should be. And I feel like my work is really about helping women be who they really are.
I love that you just spoke on a lot of your work is grounded in like that, or supporting women to move out of that good girl kind of conditioning. And I read one of your posts the other day and it so landed with me, because I also speak about the good girl and the cool girl in my work with women. And it was something like the cool girl is just the good girl in different clothing or something like that.
I think it's like a different outfit or a different costume,
yes.
right?
And I would love to hear you speak about this, because I think we hear about the good girl conditioning a lot, but we don't really hear about like the cool girl. And I speak about it a lot in terms of like, as teenage girls, we're conditioned to push down our desires and push down our voice and the different parts of ourselves, thinking that's what makes us desirable, especially to men. It's like, I don't care. I'm not like all the other girls. I don't care what you do with me or what I eat, and then that leads to us, we're teenagers, but then we become women who are still doing that, are still pushing down their voice, their needs, what we desire in the world, because we think that's what makes us attractive. So I'd love to hear how you see that like cool girl kind of personality or conditioning playing out for many women, and how you might support a woman to move through that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of both of those patterns, both of them are a deviation from who you authentically are. They are learned patterns and behaviors in order to get what you want or to get your needs met, usually. Primarily the need for safety, belonging, acceptance, connection and intimacy with others. And so early on, we assume different roles via these patterns and behaviors, and these make up our personalities in a way, because they're like the most surefire ways that we've learned to get what we want or get close to what we need. So if you have a deep need for connection, but you were neglected as a child, or you just had parents, let's say, who are really busy, they weren't deeply attuned to your needs, you basically like protect yourself by creating a pattern that might sound something like, oh, I don't need it anyway. I don't need your attention or your love anyway. I can do it on my own. And then you might notice that that pattern starts to be mirrored in your adult relationships, where you don't really care, or you think you don't care if the guy is texting you back, or you're pretending that you don't care, because it's actually easier to reject yourself than to be rejected externally. It's too painful. It reminds you of a deep shame and a deep pain or a deep neglect that already exists within yourself. So in a way, these patterns are very smart, and they're very entangled sometimes in our ways of being and our personalities. But what we can start to uncover, whether it's the good girl or the cool girl, is like, what need is underneath that pattern? And is there a healthier way that I can start to get that need met? So if I'm deeply craving connection with someone, what are the ways that I can create that connection in healthier ways, or ways that feel better for me, and don't, land me in these continuous cycles of, dating guys, and then they present all the red flags and I ignore them, and then I end up in the same dynamic again and again and again. So the cool girl and the good girl, if you think about it, are essentially just masks that you use to get your needs met. And you might realize as an adult that those masks are no longer functioning in ways that push you in the direction of what you want.
That's such a beautiful way to describe that too, like as the mask as well. Like there's always that authentic, true version of a woman living underneath that.
Yeah.
I want to kind of like circle to a place. I went through something last year, or as like a recovering good girl. I'm someone that grew up very much in like, I was pretty popular. I did well at school, and I never had the experience of people or experiencing people not like me to my face, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I grew up kind of knowing how to have people like me and being that good girl. And I had a particular experience last year, and I thought of you and your work as well, and it was something that really got me through, is you speak about being okay to be the villain in someone else's story. And I think this is huge for the good girl, right? Because the good girl wants to micromanage everyone's perception of her, so she's never seen as the villain. It's like, oh my God, I set a boundary and it's upset someone, I'm going to take that boundary back. Or, oh my gosh, that person's going to be upset if I've done this, or they're going to see me in a certain line. Oh my gosh, I'm going to change that behavior, and I'm not going to do that, so that I'm constantly being perceived as good, as good, as good. And this has been huge for me in the last year or so, around like really getting comfortable with people perceiving me as something I would have once been so fucking terrified to be seen as. And actually seeing this as like the only path to liberation. Like, it's fucking exhausting to live a life where we truly believe it's our job to micromanage how people are viewing us, which is literally the life of the people pleaser and the good girl. And I love that line, and I've heard you say that line again and again. It's like becoming comfortable being the villain in someone else's story. And I would love to hear like your journey with that, or like how that's played out for you, or just anything around your work with women around like really, don't even know if it's even getting comfortable or just like leaning into the reality that if you want to be fully expressed, that's going to be part of your practice.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's easy for me still. Like, I really don't like at times being misrepresented or misunderstood, right? I'm human, and I think we all have that deep craving to be understood or seen in a certain light. We want how we feel on the inside to like be received on the outside, for sure, because we're interconnected creatures as humans, right? Like, we exist in relationship with other, we experience who we are through the reflections of other people. So when you are misunderstood, I never want to paint this picture that you might just get to a place where you just like never give any fucks ever again. Because I also think it's important sometimes to take feedback on and like filter it through your own perspective and your values, and think about like, oh, is there anywhere that I could grow, based on this critique or this feedback? I think that's very important as a leader to have that humility as well. But where I would suggest people start, if this is a journey that they're also on, is before we jump to like be the villain in their story, let's just start with, how about we just let people be wrong about us? Or we just like let them, have their narrative about it. And how can we show up with love, but still, standing in our truth? And then also, can we build the discernment to know like when is it appropriate to actually sit down and clarify with people? Like, if someone's got the wrong end of the stick and it's a relationship you really value, it's probably worthwhile sitting down and having an emotionally charged but emotionally attuned conversation with that person, and maybe explaining your intent, apologizing for your impact, and recognizing like sometimes you have good intent and the impact hurts someone, and you can apologize without making yourself wrong or making it mean that you're a piece of shit, right? But then there are also moments where you really don't need to explain yourself. And I think the more that you get to know yourself, the more that you actually work on building your confidence and really tapping into what is your authentic identity as a woman, what are your values, are you living by those? The more that you do that inner work, it becomes easier to build the discernment of knowing when that conversation needs to be had versus when you just need to let that person have their fucking, movie about you.
I love that piece around discernment, because I think sometimes, and And I even see this play out sometimes in my work when I speak about being a full spectrum woman and being fully expressed, especially in relationship. And some women take that to mean like, okay, I can just like project all over my partner and be like, I'm being fully expressed. And it's like, no, that's not quite it. Like there still needs to be that level of vulnerability, and there still needs to be that that willingness to lean in those moments. And I think it's the same. It's like being an unapologetic woman isn't just walking through the world and treading all over people. It's like owning, who you are and your values and all these pieces. And also being willing, like you said, to be like, this relationship is important to me. There's something here. I'm going to fucking lean in. I'm going to deepen in intimacy. I'm going to actually bring the truth of my heart through in this moment. And I think that's such a piece, like that discernment piece, like you said.
Yeah, I truly believe the more unapologetic you become in yourself, you actually become a more caring person because you are genuinely caring about other people. When I'm sitting down and giving my energy to someone, let's say someone who's important to me is triggered by something that I've done or they're upset with me. If I'm sitting down and like nutting that out with you, and I'm saying like, I'm so sorry that this action of mine made you feel that way. And also like, this is my truth. Can I explain it to you so that you can understand like my point of view as well? Like if I'm investing that energy in that, like you have to have a regulated nervous system to be able to do that and to operate in that level of emotional intelligence. And I'm also able to like have that conversation genuinely and authentically with someone because I'm solid in who I am. And I actually think sometimes you learn to apologize more, the more unapologetic you are, because it's not like you're losing something when you genuinely apologize.
Yes, I love that. And being unapologetic, it isn't like this hardening and it's like, I'm just going to give no fucks and like walk through the world and not give a fuck. No, it's actually, or how I see it is like, it's an opening, it's a revealing, right? It's actually removing those masks and removing anything that's hardened us to be like, this is who I am, which is very fucking vulnerable, very revealing.
Yeah, totally.
I would love to bring this conversation specifically into relationships, even sex, because this is like a huge part of what we speak about on the podcast. So I would love, and you can bring personal story in here, or you can bring how you support your clients in here, but how do you really see when a woman journeys from potentially the cool girl or the good girl into walking more of this path of being unapologetic? How do you actually see that showing up in her relationship and intimacy? Like what
I feel like a lot of times there's a dry spell between the two destinations on the road, let's say. So when you start setting boundaries, raising your standards, becoming a very clear yes for what you want, and really understanding the clear like no's and the non-negotiables, you might feel like your dating pool is almost shrunk because you're suddenly very aware of all the fucking shenanigans and bullshit around you, right? They often talk about in the self-development world, this journey that one goes through the more aware you become. And it's like, at first you're unconsciously incompetent. And then you move to this very frustrating stage where you're consciously incompetent. So if you imagine like when you go to drive a car, right? When you don't know how to drive a car, you've never driven it, you're like a passenger princess, you're like easy, not even really thinking about it. But when you get behind the wheel and you don't know how to drive the car, that's almost the scariest and most frustrating part of the journey, because you're suddenly aware of like, oh my God, there's all these things that I don't know how to do. What do I do in this situation? And so, not to say that when women are journeying towards being more unapologetic in love that they're incompetent per se, but they suddenly are more aware of all the areas maybe where they've previously let their boundaries slip, where they've settled for something that is so mediocre and so beneath them and just bullshit behavior from other people. And so you become almost like more hyper aware of all the things around you that are like the opposite of what you want. And in that stage, I feel like that can be very discouraging for a lot of women because they really feel like, I'm doing all this work and I'm not seeing like the rewards yet. So for anyone who's in that stage, like you got to hold the pose. You got to really hold the pose. You got to hold the boundaries, hold the bar high in this phase. And I would say like look to people around you or on social media, you know, who have walked the path, who can share their stories, who can like be that light in the dark and remind you that it's going to be so worth it to just stay true to the work that you're doing, to stay true to the new standards that you're setting for your love life. And, you know, eventually one day you're going to have that moment of looking back and be like, oh, so worth it. I'm so fucking proud of myself for all those little crunchy moments where I persevered and where I kept rising above. But you don't get the gift of hindsight until you're over there. Yeah.
Totally. Something that I always say is like the price we pay to be a fully expressed woman is awkward and uncomfortable. And I think that's so important in those moments where maybe we would have had a pattern of holding our tongue, like biting our tongue and not saying the thing. And then suddenly we're like you said, it's like it's glaringly obvious where we've been biting our tongue and like not saying the thing. And now we want to be the woman that says the thing and brings her truth. But that makes us literally want to throw up or like shit ourselves. Like we're literally like, how? Like, oh my gosh, that feels so scary. And that is like, it's so, I think so many people want to bypass just all of the scariness and like the discomfort to be like, I want to be in the place where I'm just the woman that speaks her truth. And it's like, we all, like every woman that is walking through the world unapologetically, I'm just going to say, I believe every single woman that has gone through some initiation that's felt deeply uncomfortable or has had to lean into a moment that's felt incredibly scary or had to be with awkwardness when she's brought her truth and not knowing how it's going to land with people around her. And I think it's important to, for women to really know like that's a natural, not only natural, but necessary part of the process and the unfolding.
Yeah. Courage feels shit, you know, like I think we think of courage as having, you know, honor and being so inspiring, and it really is, right? But like courage is courage because you're usually afraid or it's edgy, it's outside your comfort zone. That's why it's courageous. So I think when we look at other people's stories of being brave and courageous or seeing, you know, their journey from zero to hero and like healing their lives, it's really easy from that outside perspective to just be like, wow, queen, you're so inspiring. But then when you're in your messy middle and you've got that really like sticky moment of having to choose the better choice or revert back to where you've been, which is safe and comfortable, but maybe dysfunctional. Like you're not going to feel like this heroine in the moment. You are a heroine in the moment, but you're probably going to be like having, you know, hesitation, maybe feeling confused, you know, in your journal, like hitting your pillows, whatever it is that you're doing. It's not always like very glamorous, you know? But I think that's why it's courageous, because it's not smooth, it's not pretty, it's not easy. You're choosing to do something that is out of the ordinary.
Yeah. And I think that even circling back to what I shared about like why you were such an expander for me at that time in the mastermind was I saw you again and again have many courageous moments, have many moments in like the grit of business and leadership, because that's the fucking truth. Even like, no matter how much money you're making in leadership, you can never bypass, like in business, you can never fucking bypass the grit of being in business. You can never bypass having to have uncomfortable conversations, whether that's with team or clients or, you know, whoever comes into your business field. Like that is for any woman listening that wants to be in business and wants to make impact, like you've got to expand your capacity to have those kind of courageous conversations and lean in those courageous moments. And I'd love to hear your journey with that in terms of maybe specifically in business around how that's felt for you, having sticky, gritty moments and being the woman that chooses to lean in.
Babe, you had a front row seat to like 2021 was like the best year and also just like the worst year at the same time. And I wouldn't change it, right? Because I've learned so much, but I really feel like so many of the lessons I'm only now just integrating like a few years on. So I was just like holding a lot that year. And I was very grateful to, be in the mastermind that year because that was kind of like my little sanctuary. I could go when shit was hitting the fan or when, I was reaching new heights and kind of learning how to be with so much energy of like so much money and success. So yeah, essentially like in that year, which was the last year of my Saturn return, which is no surprise, I, went from, I had an abundant business, but my income radically shot up like 10 times in a month. And I just sort of went from like 0 to 1,000 in terms of like sales and new clients and growth. And, I had the most people ever in my master classes. Sometimes I was having 2,000 people on a masterclass. So it was like a lot of visibility, a lot of like money coming in my bank account, a lot of eyes on me. I also had like quite bad trolling happening that year to me on my social media. I had like 2 client situations that were very like uncomfortable for me to navigate. Just like unexpected situations that really brought up a lot of my sisterhood wounds. And for me, like my sisterhood wound is around betrayal and rejection. And so the pattern that kind of shows up for me throughout my life and then occasionally in business is like women who like put me on a pedestal and then they just suddenly turn on me and decide that I'm their villain, right? I'm their hero, then I'm their villain. So it was this amazing year in so many ways. And I'd like just moved to Mallorca as well. And it was beautiful. But then there was also a lot of challenges that came with the wins and with the successes and with all the things that I'd always dreamed of creating. So I really was, I guess, taught how to hold like gratitude in one hand and like grief and discomfort in the other at the same time. That would be the way I would describe it. And since then, particularly the year after, I really had to like come back to my nervous system care and focusing on like taking care of myself and building that discernment of how much I want to give and how visible I did want to be on the internet. Because I just had so many projections on me all the time. And I sort of was learning how to be with that and also stand in my work, which is like to be an unapologetic woman. Like I'm holding the torch here. So I'm like, how do I want to keep holding this torch and also taking care of myself? So yeah.
Tell us more about that because obviously like 2021 huge. Was there a point in which you wanted to, like even witnessing you lately, I can feel you coming back the fuck online and like standing stronger in your mission than ever before. And I'm curious to hear of like the journey of even the trolling. Even I haven't experienced that to a big degree at all. And that is something that I witness other women go through. And I'm like, I can see how people, like the whole cancel culture, I can see how people go, I want to just fucking delete everything and run the fuck away and never show up online again. And I think so many women particularly hold that fear and it keeps them back from actually bringing their medicine into the world. So as someone who has moved through that, I'd love to hear like, yeah, were there moments where you were just like, fuck this, I'm out of here. I don't want to actually be very visible online at all. And then how have you kind of moved through those moments, or where are you at with all of that now?
Yeah, I do feel like there was some divine orchestration going on, because it was at the end of my Saturn return. And like with your Saturn return, a lot of times part of the assignment is stepping more into your North Node destiny, and mine's in Capricorn. And Capricorn's very like that sign of like, CEO, let's get it done. Like the opposite sign is Cancer, which is more emotional, right? And being more like caring and like really making sure everyone's okay. And it's not that Capricorn's not like that, but I feel like it was an assignment for me to separate things into piles in my mind of like, what is my responsibility? And where is someone just taking a shit on my table and wanting me to eat it, And I, as fiery as I am, I'm very, very sensitive. I'm very caring. I'm super fucking loyal, and I go above and beyond for people. And so when I feel like people throw it in my face, or they, misrepresent me in some way, it's not the easiest for like the conditioned parts of me, right? So like the past parts of me, the good girl, like it's not the easiest for that part of me. So I have to like very intentionally like work against that conditioning, to choose different patterns, to choose different outcomes and responses when these things happen. With it be happening in 2021, I mean, the trolling was really weird because it suddenly showed up in my requests inbox, but it had been going on there was two people, and there was one who had literally been trolling me for what looked like a year and a half or 2 years, but the messages had never shown up. They all showed up at once, right? So I'm just scrolling through, and this person is responding to every single thing I post on stories, like just like calling me a cunt, saying I should die, just commenting on my appearance, commenting on my life, just like trying to go for the jugular, right? And then around
obviously, or just like a very no followers, all that kind of thing.
One was, and then one was on private, but I could see it was someone's account.
Yeah.
Like it was like some woman's account, and she had followers and like a profile picture. So, I mean, I don't know what role I was starring in her movie, but definitely in like the villain category, I'm sure. And so that was happening. And then like I also had these situations with these clients, and basically, I was holding space for so many people. And part of my good girl conditioning is I am the responsible good girl, right? So I'm the kind of person through my trauma where I can remain cool, calm, and collected on the surface in the face of pressure, even if inside I'm like, fuck, or even if inside my heart is breaking, right? In a way, even though that's like a response to trauma, it's quite a nice like skill to have in certain situations. So I kept my game face on. I held my space. I internally wanted to crawl under a rock or like go into the forest and disappear. But I had people to serve, I had people who I was committed to inside of programs, masterminds, who were relying on me. Even there was one time where I had like 1,500 people on a masterclass, and I was crying the whole way up to the masterclass. And then I like got on the class. So I kind of like powered through in that year, and I thought I was all right. But then like late 2022, like a year later, I really started noticing the aftermath. Like I noticed I was hiding a little bit more. I didn't want to like share certain things anymore. I found I would procrastinate on like doing my podcast or like doing the Instagram lives that I was planning to do, stuff like that, because I just couldn't be bothered at that point. I was like, I just can't be bothered like giving and giving and giving if people are just going to like treat me like trash. And so I kind of took this step back and really focused on my own healing. I also just wanted to spend more time like in my actual life with the people who love me and with the things that bring me joy outside my business. because ultimately what the whole experience really highlighted to me was, even though all these amazing things happened, I made all this money, I really enjoyed running all the programs that year, I went through the challenges. What I realized is, like, part of why it hurt me so much is because my identity had been entangled with my brand.
Oh, that's
so
huge.
I just kind of just started doing more things in my actual life and figuring out again, who am I outside of this Instagram personality that people project me as. And now I'm coming back and it's personal.
I love that. Oh, she's back. She's back. I loved when in that year where you were kind of focusing on your healing, and I loved how into hobbies you were. And I remember DMing you when you'd gone to your what were you doing, like clay or
pottery, yeah.
And you were like, get hobbies, it's the best thing ever. And I think around that time too, I started pole dancing, and it is so true, because there is a reality to being a business owner where you can't half-ass that journey. If you want it, you've got to be devoted. And then I think that can kind of go to one end of the spectrum of oh my gosh, I'm so in my entire life, and especially being online and our brand being part of our lifestyle and all of these different things that they become so messy and entangled. And that really inspired me when you were doing pottery. I was like, yeah, I need to have things outside of that I'm just doing, not for fucking Instagram or not anything to do with my business, just for me, which I think we can forget when we're business owners.
Yeah, totally. I just wanted to come back to who I am in my heart and just kind of put a little bit of separation between me and the projection field of having so many eyes on me online. I don't know. Are you a 5 line in human design?
What's the 5?
Well, you have your profile numbers, so it will be I'm a 3/5.
But what's the 5 represent? I'm the
what?
I'm the I think I'm a 2/6 or a 3/6.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if you had the 5 like me.
What's the 5?
You're spicy and unapologetic. The 5 line is the heretic, and so
okay.
For anyone who has this line, it's kind of you can be a bit of a walking trigger sometimes for other people, or they call it a projection field for other people, like a mirror. So people who have 5 lines are really likely to have cult followings and become celebrities, but it's really that hero villain energy. People think that you can save the day. So Taylor Swift, I'm pretty sure she's a 5/1, and it's just I think it's a really cool example because people love or hate her. But what happens with that save the day energy, where people think oh my God, this woman, I want to go where she's going, she's paving the way, I'm coming with you. They can put a lot of unconscious pressure on you to save the day, to be everything that they project you to be. And so inevitably, because we're all human, when we fuck up or we say something that lands the wrong way for someone, or we just have a human moment and let people down, that can sort of leave you open to the not so nice projections that also come. Another thing that one of my mentors, Jazz Jervis, was saying to me, because she's a 5 line as well,
I know Jazz.
Yeah, I love Jazz. She's one of my mentors at the moment.
Oh, she's so glorious.
She's the 5 line, and she was saying the other day that because people see you as that save the day energy, they know you can hold so much, and so sometimes they want to dump their stuff on you. Also, sometimes they want to knock you down a few pegs. That's how she explained it, and I was like, oh my God, I so have that experience. And so, yeah, I just wanted to just be in my own aura and in my own energy for a bit.
Yeah.
And just come back to like the roots of why I do what I do and like who I am outside of just being this symbol to other people.
Totally. And I think that is like showing up online and then being visible. Like you used that word before. There is a reality to that. Like we are, if we want to create impact, visibility is part of that. And we cannot control how we're being perceived or what people are projecting onto us. And that is, I think, one of the initiations of leadership or being visible online is learning how to not, take that on. Even being, there's like a fierceness being pregnant right now that I have not felt before. Like I felt fierce in the past, but there is like this, the only word I keep describing it as is like unfuckwithable. And I felt that in the past, but like, and especially the way I'm choosing to do pregnancy and birth is, not very conventional. And I've been very open and sharing what I'm, what our plans are and how I'm going about my pregnancy. And I've had some messages and I've had some comments and it's been I've never, usually in the past, if I would have had people disagree with me or bring certain comments online, I would have been like, oh no, I've upset someone, or oh no, like just the part of me that can, the good, like you said before, that that conditioning, I would have felt that and it would have been very present and I would have had to do the work to just move through that. But there's just this interesting piece around being pregnant and when people are bringing any of their projections to me, I'm just like, no, no, this is not a fucking space for that. I will not take that on. And I'm even just having fun replying to people and just like really letting them feel my like, no, that's not welcome here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is available, for every woman, that we can really sometimes we need those kind of initiations to have us feeling that no and being able to like transmit that to the world. But it is kind of something we need, right? If we're choosing to be visible and spicy and like have a fucking opinion online and not just be like beige in what we're bringing, because people don't want fucking beige. If you want to actually make impact, you've got to fucking say something. And that means people will most likely disagree because you're actually fucking saying something.
Totally. I mean, one of the ways I kind of mentally get myself right if I'm having a moment of like caring about what some random person thinks is I just say to myself, like, okay, would I rather be like really safe and really boring and like ordinary and forgettable, or would I rather be like distinct and like in the spotlight and like standing for something, not your ordinary? I mean, I don't know if it's just because I'm a Leo, but I'm like literally the worst fucking insult you could say to me would be like, oh, I like forgot who you are, or like you're quite normal and ordinary. You know what I mean? Like that would be so rude to me. So I'm like, okay, well, like you might not, like my flavor, but at least I have one.
Yes, at least you remembered me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because you are such a fucking Leo, and I want to talk about like the way you just like embody that Leo energy, because you are so, I think the only word for it is like bougie, just the way that you like the clothes that you wear, and like you're unafraid to really, really be seen and like lean into luxury and like allow yourself to enjoy the material parts of life. And I think sometimes in the world of like consciousness and spirituality, it's very, and I know this was my journey. I'd actually be interested to see if you had like a season of this, but when I first like became spiritual, it was almost like, oh my God, I can only shop at op shops, and I'm totally vegan now. And like, I just suddenly had all these rules about how I navigated the material world and what was okay and what was spiritual. And then what was not spiritual. So Netflix wasn't spiritual, and dressing in certain things wasn't spiritual, and just like this such black and white, almost like hierarchy of yes and no. And that was such a huge piece for me in learning that like, oh, what the fuck? Like I can wear whatever the fuck I want, eat whatever the fuck I want, really, navigate the world in whatever way I want, and still be a deeply spiritual human and still be a deeply conscious human if I'm meeting all of that with consciousness. So I'd love to, and you're just someone that I see play so beautifully in integrating those worlds and not seeing them as like one or the other. So yeah, I'd love to hear, did you have like a stage of being like almost like trying to push away the material world? Have you always just been like spiritual and bougie?
I didn't push it away, but I hid it from my like online presence or a bit. Or just kind of like dimmed it down a bit. Like I'd sort of conceal certain things that I liked or that I was drawn to just because I wasn't sure, like, is this congruent? Like, do I fit into this world? This is like earlier in my journey when I was sort of starting to bring like little tendrils of spirituality into my work, and seeing like, ooh, like, what are people going to react to this? Because when I started my business, I was in London and I did, I worked with like a lot of English women and I did a lot of like corporate talks as well as my online work. And so it was very like crazy at the time to be like dancing with my sage, you know, on my Instagram stories. Like, so cute. It's like, little did we know how unhinged it would become. So like I was sort of testing out my like showing my expression spiritually, and then also like I wasn't sure, you know, where do I fit, because I don't really feel like I fit in this very like wellness fitness world that I've come up in anymore, because they all think that like the spiritual stuff is whack. But then like all these spiritual girlies are, you know, dressing in this way, or they renounce these kinds of things. These are the rules, so to speak. But I think I've always felt like a bit of a black sheep internally. And I think part of being a pioneer or someone who's like paving the way is like, you're not looking to anyone else to give you permission. You're not fitting into this box or like subscribing to these rules. And so I started like just on my journey of authentic expression, just showing up how I really am. And like how I really am is I really like fucking clothes. I really like designer clothes. I really like very expensive jewelry. I like expensive shit in my house. Like, I think for me, it's not really about like materialism and having to have like this logo and everything, even though I can kind of play in that world a little bit. It's more like I like a certain quality of things. I like a certain aesthetic of things. The beauty of that genuinely like lights me up. It makes me feel so satisfied and just like full of joy. I feel like I'm drinking and eating it in with my eyes, you know? And that's just an authentic interest and preference that I have. So why is that not spiritual if I'm in like a healthy relationship? I'm not like spending my last pennies to buy a Chanel bag. You know what I mean? I'm not like feeling insecure showing up to a party if I don't have a certain designer. I'm like, it's not like that. I'm just enjoying adorning myself in certain things. It's very innocent, you know? Why can't that be spiritual?
I love that. And I think that is, I see so many women come into my work as well. And I think a lot of women find maybe the path of feminine embodiment and more this work, like being an unapologetic woman. I think they almost always walk through the doorway of some kind of like spirituality. And I see that women carrying this almost like, this almost like yearning to be given permission to just do what they want. And to like stay. Totally. It's almost like the good girl is still playing out when they're in the spiritual world, because it's like, give me the rules. Okay, don't eat meat, don't wear that, go to yoga, meditate this amount of time. It's like there's still like the good, well, and this was definitely my experience. It was just almost like my high achiever was like, tell me how to be a good spiritual girl and I'll do it so fucking well. And it almost just anchored me deeper in that identity of like, look, like someone like praise me for how much I've achieved, like how good I'm being and how good I'm ticking all the box and how right I'm doing this, walking this path. And I think it is, there's such I truly believe the path of the feminine is around fucking all of those rules off and like descending from our head and those rules into the truth of our body and the truth of our pussy and leading from that space. And I feel like so many women are just aching for a permission slip to do that. Like actually just trust what feels fucking right.
Totally. It's always like what's authentic and what's the intention, right? Some women and even some of my friends literally have no interest in the shit that I love, right? But we appreciate each other. I'm like, I love that you go camping and wear no shoes and like how you know, are so committed to this path of like, you know, whatever they're into, like low tox living or veganism. Like, I love that because that is their authentic joy, expression, and preferences, like being embodied in the world. And that lights me up. That makes me so happy for people. And so for me, it's kind of like that's how I want, you know, people I'm in relationship with to like judge or view my preferences through. Like, I just like, since I was a little girl, every single photo of me, look at my outfits, they're ridiculous, right? I always have some big hat on, like roses on my head, sequins, started wearing lipstick when I was like 2 or 3 years old. That is just like genuinely something that brings me joy, the same way that, you know, someone might like painting. That's just a certain creative expression that I have. And I think similar to like, you can go to the gym from a place of hating your body and wanting to change it. You can go to the gym and be really into that from a place of like wanting to be well, wanting to be strong, wanting to live a long and prosperous life. Like, it's all about like what is authentic for you and how can you make choices and live in a way that really sparks joy and is authentic for you and has beautiful intentionality around it.
Yes. Oh, I'm loving this conversation.
Thanks. you know, I realized the other day, I don't know if it's because like, you know, of having pets and stuff, but like, even though I love like my clothes and I have lots of like material comfort objects around me at all time, like I'm not super attached to those things. Like for example, I went to a women's circle on the weekend and I put a gold and diamond ring on the altar and I left it there and it's gone, right? Like it's disappeared and Ubered somewhere, right? Someone at the hotel is like enjoying it.
Yes.
But you know, I like wasn't upset. I was like, oh, that's a shame. Do you know what I mean? Because like me wearing stuff is not about like, it's not about attachment. It's not like I need that to feel whole. I need these things to feel like I'm good enough. It's just like, oh, that's like a fun way of expressing myself in this like, you know, human body that I'm in this lifetime. And like, if I lose a ring or if like my dogs destroy something in my house, I'm like, okay, like it's fine. You know, it's not the end of the world. I think that's maybe where some of the like critique around materialism might come from, when people do it from a space of like ego or feeling not good enough, and they think that those clothes or those designers or that house is going to make them feel better inside, when actually the work needs to happen internally, and all that stuff is just fun.
Completely. And then that stuff becomes play. Then, like you said, fun. It's like we're just like playing in this material world, knowing that we're, you know, a spiritual being, but it's not a deep part of our identity.
Yeah, totally. It's like preferences versus like the core things that make you who you are.
Yes. Okay, Ames, you talk about, we're going to come into completion in the next little while, but you talk about being a bad bitch as well. I would love to hear what that means for you. What does it mean? What does it mean on your journey, but also like what does it mean to like embody that bad bitch kind of archetype or energy?
Yeah, I sort of like to do this thing where I own things so they can't own me anymore, right? And if you think of like the good girl conditioning, which I resonate with, I think so many women do, being the good girl is just a reaction to not wanting to be bad, right? So how do we like take bad and own it? And I really think that's where like the vernacular sort of originates from, is like, something being bad is now almost something being good. Similar to in Australia, like calling someone a cunt is a compliment, or like you talk about like reclaiming like the sacred slut, right? So for me, reclaiming like that word bad and even the word bitch, right, that have such intense connotations around it and like so much meaning that is quite disempowering to women. How do we take it and like own it so it doesn't own us? So to me, being a bad bitch is unique to each woman. It's really about being unapologetic in who you are, which includes your magic, but it also includes like your mess and the things that are harder to accept about yourself, and just like owning that you're human and like you're still a bad bitch, you know, despite the things that you're working to improve, despite your, you know, weaknesses or vulnerability. And really at the core, the way I like to describe this is like being a woman who isn't going to war with herself, because the world wants women to be at war with ourselves so that we are distracted, so that we won't overtake the government and the patriarchy and all of the distorted shit that exists, right? If we're at war with ourselves, we're at war with our bodies. If we are constantly thinking, I'm not enough, or this needs to change, or I need to get these things outside of me perfect, we're not going to be standing in our fullest power and our intuition and, like, you know, like you say, living from pussy power, living from like the deep truth inside of us. So to me, a bad bitch, you don't necessarily have to be like 100% of the journey. You're just on the journey to like putting the sword down with yourself one step at a time.
Oh, I love that. Putting the sword down with yourself. I've heard that in that expression of like against life, or maybe it's against your partner, but like putting the sword down with yourself. That's so fucking beautiful. That's so beautiful. And you're right. It's like that is the way we're conditioned. And this shows up in a woman's relationship to her sexuality, in relationships, in relationship to her body. Like all of it is this reality that we've been conditioned to fight ourselves and to feel like that we're always something to be fixed and there's always something, you know, wrong in a way. And yeah, I love that this idea of reclaiming words and parts of ourselves so there isn't anything to fight against. It's like, yeah, there is a bitch within me. Yeah, there's like this dragon part of me. Yeah, there's this like I always talk about this high maintenance part of a woman. And like for me, I used to like, that would have been the most offensive thing to call me, like, especially in relationship. It's like, oh, you're high maintenance. No, I'm not. I'm cool. Like I don't want for much. And then this has been such a huge part of why I can thrive in relationship now, is that I'm willing to own that there is a high maintenance part of me, or there's a part of me that tantrums, or there's a little whiny bitch in me. Like when we're actually able to own the parts of ourselves that we're so scared to be, or the world has told us are undesirable or not welcome or whatever, wrong or bad or whatever it is, like when we actually own that, they stop having power over us, or they stop coming out in manipulative fucking ways. I don't believe we can ever really get rid of any part of ourselves. So we can either fight it or own it. And I guess that's truly what it means to be an unapologetic woman. It's a woman that's not fighting against parts of herself, a woman that's truly owning and no longer apologizing for any part of herself that wants to come forth and be alive.
Yeah. I mean, you start to dissolve the shame when you own it. And when you do that, it's harder for other people to like shame you or to make you feel ashamed. They can try, they can be like, you're a bad leader, you're a harmful individual on the internet, right? But if you're like owning the part of you that maybe you have like a small part of you inside that sometimes feels like you're a bad person, right? If you are like holding that part of you and owning it and mothering it and like loving it, and they say that, it's not going to like cut you so deep when they say it. Because you'll be like, oh yeah, sometimes I am a bit like naughty, you know, sometimes I am a little bit like unhinged or a bit like unfiltered. Oh yeah, like sometimes I do like mince my words a little bit, put my foot in my mouth, or whatever the example is. You know, I really feel like when someone criticizes us and it really deeply like affects us, that's like the greatest clue into the area where you might want to start like working to own it.
Yes.
Or at least working to like, unshame part of it. Because that's really like power, isn't it? For like people to be able to say whatever they think of you, but to you, like you stay solid in who you are. And that doesn't affect like how you feel about yourself, and it doesn't affect the perception that you have of yourself as being this like inherently whole, good, messy, maybe sometimes bad human being.
I love that. Okay, beautiful. Any last pieces you would like to bring before you tell people where to find you, and maybe any work you got coming up that you'd love to invite these women into?
Well, something that I have been ranting on about lately, and it might be like a cool experiment for your listeners.
Yes, bring it to us.
Is this concept that embarrassment is made up.
I saw you talking about that the other day. Tell us more. School us.
Well, it's really interesting because my dad used to say this to me as a kid. And when you're a kid and your parents tell you shit and you're like, shut up, you stupid parent. But then now I'm an adult. I'm like, wow, that's actually really profound and wise.
Yeah.
And so he used to say to me, embarrassment is a pointless emotion. Like there's no benefit to me to feel that. So like, I'm just going to like drop it when it arises, or like, what's the point in feeling embarrassment? And I like to kind of riff on that a bit and say embarrassment is made up, because if you think about it, when you're a little baby, you aren't embarrassed about anything. You will probably eat your own poo and think it's like the funnest thing ever, or like you draw on the walls and you say whatever you want when you're a little kid, right? Like little kids don't get embarrassed, and that's why we kind of like love them, right? Because they're just so funny. They have no shame yet. They're like so shameless, not embarrassed. They do like the most unhinged things that are hilarious. And so that sort of says to me, like, embarrassment is something that is learned rather than something that is inherent. And so if embarrassment is stopping us from doing things that we truly want to do, like, telling people how we really feel, starting that business, actually like talking about the topics you want to talk about on your podcast, like whatever, wearing the outfit, like being overdressed at the party, whatever it is, like if it's made up, that means that you can just like get rid of it, or you can just decide like, oh no, unsubscribe. I'm not doing that.
Unsubscribe, embarrassment.
Yeah. So I guess like if I was to leave people kind of with like a reflection or an assignment, it would be like, what would you do if you knew embarrassment is made up, so you can just put it down?
That's huge. That's huge. And I know so many women listening to this are women that, are online, do have businesses, are, putting their voice out into the world. And I think that's huge. It's huge in the world of like creating content and, being so scared to be cringy or create something that's embarrassing or what other people will think. So I think that's just such a helpful, impactful piece for women to go actually fucking integrate and live out.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's just like, what would you do if you weren't afraid to be cringe or embarrassed? Or like sometimes the question might be like, if nothing bad would happen, like if nothing would happen as a result of me doing this. And usually like unconsciously, we're just afraid to be embarrassed because we're afraid to get rejected. But at the same time, like think of the little kids example, little babies example, like what we find most endearing and magnetic about babies or even dogs. Like, like I think it's so funny how dogs will just fucking do a shit in the middle of the road when like traffic is coming. You know what I mean? Like, and they just look at you. Like, I'm like, that is iconic. That's my inspiration, to get to that level of comfort and ease within my being.
I love that.
So it is made up though, right? Because if babies and dogs, especially because if you think about it, animals and very small children, babies, they're not really influenced by language, right? And language gives us meaning, and the meaning of certain things sometimes is like, this is embarrassing. So it's like, what if you didn't give anything that meaning and you just channeled that energy of a dog shitting in the street?
Go wear the outfit, go post the post, go say the thing and pretend you're Amy's dog shitting in the street. Oh, I love it. Thank you, my love. This has been a glorious conversation. I would love you to tell us where can we find you, and also, where can these women work with you, or what do you have coming up that's exciting that you want to tell us about?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. And I'm also just want to say I'm so excited to watch like the next level of unhinged Meg when you become a mum, because I just do feel like you're going to be an expander for so many mums. Do you know what I mean? Because I think it comes with so many like rules and judgments and projections on what motherhood is supposed to be. So I just feel excited for like that you're living in this realm, paving the way.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that.
Well, I just want to add one little piece here. When I was saying before about feeling unfuckwithable, I'm like, I'm just pregnant. What is that even going to fucking feel like once I've like gone through the initiation of birth or like into motherhood? I feel like that's only just going to amplify. So very exciting. Yeah, watch it. It's going to just get spicy over here.
It's going to be a vibe. I'm excited to watch you in that journey, and then also know how many people that just through you expressing and living that way, it will empower by osmosis, because just as like a side note, like we can talk all day about saying the unapologetic thing, or like, showing up in a certain way as a leader. But so many people like are impacted by women who are just being authentically themselves and being unapologetically themselves.
Yes.
Right? Even if they never tell you, even if you never like work with them or you're not friends with them, like there's so many like butterfly effects that happen when you live like that. And so I feel like you being a mom is definitely going to be like this big wave for everyone.
Thanks, Ames.
Yeah. Got to pay those compliments back. And then in terms of where to find me, so Instagram is This Is Amy Rushworth. My website, amyrushworth.com. And my podcast is The Amy Rushworth Show. You can't forget it if you know my name.
Easy. And if someone wanted to be deeper in your world, how could they do that right now?
So you can come and talk to me about one-on-one journeys, breathwork journeys as well. Just come and say hi, because then we can be in each other's like orbit. And then if I have little secret things going on and things coming up, I can also let you know.
Your Instagram is such a vibe. Go over to Amy's Instagram just to see her daily outfits.
And dance parties, all the things.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ames. This has just been such a phenomenal chat. I'm so grateful to have had you here.
Thank you.